Hi, I'm Jada from Girl from the Coast Designs. I create knitting patterns and tutorials designed with structure, clarity and care. Okay, so today I'm going to be working on the neckline for the Tudor twist garment. In this instance, it is the V-neck cropped vest. I'll talk you through how we do the decreases, why we do them in the way that we do, and then picking up stitches, and finally the tubular bind off at the end. So beginning at the beginning, in the pattern for every size there are a number of held stitches for the back neckline. As this is the largest size in the garment, it's a 12XL, there are 110 stitches held across mainly the dense cable stitch in the centre of the back. We need to decrease these stitches quite rapidly because there are, due to the denseness of the cable, there are a lot of stitches held across here, and even if we do a 2:3 ratio like you normally do, for picking up stitches, there'll be far too many stitches across the back neck, and that will make the neckline distorted. So on this size, as I said, there's 110 held stitches. I need to reduce those down to 62, which is a decrease of 48. That means roughly I'll be working a stitch and then doing a decrease right across this row of stitches here. So I'll work on those and then I'll come back to you and I will talk about how I pick up stitches down the neckline. You'll see as part of my preparation what I've done is I've got the two centre V stitches held and marked here. They're live stitches, and I have marked the halfway point on each side of the neckline so I can pace myself accordingly when it comes to picking up the stitches. So I'll work across the back and then I'll come back to you and we'll talk about how we pick up stitches down the side of the necks. Okay, so I've worked across those 110 stitches and I've now got my required 62. This is a 2x2 rib in the pattern. So even though the final stitch count is relatively unimportant, providing it's divisible by 4, the 2x2 rib pattern will work. The other thing to note is that these two centre stitches that form the centre of the V, they always need to be a knit so that we have a nice strong vertical line. So depending on how you do your pickup, you will need to work out, depending on how many you actually pick up on either side, what you need to start your beginning of round with so that these stitches do work into the appropriate knit sequence rather than being purls, or worse yet, one knit and one purl. So just bear that in mind as you go. Another thing that I like to do, which is not necessary, you can do it your own way, is I actually like to pick up in the rib that I'm doing. So you see that I have knitted in the knits and the purls as I'm working around now. And I'll do the same thing when I pick up the stitches. But alternatively, you can just knit all the stitches all the way around and then start your rib sequence next time around. It's entirely up to you. So now I'm going to start working down the side of the neckline. As I said, I've marked my halfway point so I know what it is that I'm working towards. And as with any standard pickup, it's a case of picking up the bars in between the stitches as you go along, and the way the decrease is worked around the neckline, I've done this as purl sequences because I tend to find them easier to pick up. So I've picked up a stitch here. My last one was a knit, so I'm going to purl this stitch. And then it's miss one, pick up one, and I'll purl that one. And as you'll see, I knit English style, but same principle works in continental style as well. So find the next bar. No, missed that one. Go on to this one. Ooh, where are we? Here we are. Just in here. And and I'll just carry on down the neckline, and I'll come back to you again when we're down at the V. Okay, so I'm now 3/4 of my way round my pickup neckline. I'm down to the V, and as you can see, the decreases that are worked in the pattern form a really nice frame around the neckline, and how much these decreases that counteract the high stitch counts needed for the cable pull the neckline in just beautifully when you just compare that side of the neck to how this one sits. So it sits really great. So I'm down to these 2 center stitches, and lucky for me, my stitch counts worked out, and they will, in fact, my sequence is right. They will be knit stitches as I'd planned for. Rather than take this removable stitch holder off, I'm actually going to leave it on, because I'll just knit these stitches and put it back on, because it actually forms a really great visual reminder of where to do the decreases when we work the decrease round in the pattern itself. So I'm going to work those stitches. I'll work up the other side, making sure that my pickups work are an exact mirror of this side, so I don't end up with a lopsided neck. And then I'll come back to you after I've done a few rounds, and we'll talk about the decreases and how they're worked. So I've done 2 rounds on my rib, and it's coming up lovely. It's drawing in the neckline, and now I'm halfway down. I'm at the bottom of the V on my 3rd round, which is the first decrease round for the V. So I am 1 stitch before these center 2 stitches. On this side, I am going to knit those 2 stitches together, and on this side it's a SSK decrease, so that you have a decrease leaning in each direction. And there we go, and I'll carry on round. So every alternate round from here on in is a decrease round, and when I have done 7 rounds in total, I'll be starting my setup for the tubular bind off. Okay, so now I have done 7 rounds in the 2x2 pattern. As you'll see, down here are the 2 center stitches, and I've retained the stitch marker there so I don't lose track of where those center 2 stitches are. And here's the knit 2 together decrease on this side and the SSK on this. And as you'll see, it just pulls that neckline in nicely. The stitches, once you start across the back, actually keep the large cable center panel nice and neat and tight. And all in all, I've got another probably 5 rounds, I think, to do before I bind off, and I'll come back to you and show you how that bind off occurs. Okay, so we're now ready to start the first setup round in the tubular bind off. So that's my beginning of the round marker. I've knit 2 stitches, yarn in front, slip the 2 purl stitches, yarn round to knit 1, knit 2, yarn in front, slip the 2 purl stitches. And we just carry on like this all the way round the round, and then we set up round 2. So what do we do when our stitch counts don't match up? This is the case for me. I've got 2 extra knit stitches over my purl stitches because of the decrease at the centre of the V. What I'm going to do on this purl round is I am going to absorb into 2 separate columns along the back of the neck an extra knit stitch out of each of these knit columns. And then when it comes time to grafting, my stitch counts will match up. Purl columns are really forgiving and visually hide these small adjustments. On a neckband, it's like I say, I prefer to do it across the back of the neck where the leg's likely to show. If you're doing it on the bottom edge of the garments, it's nice to do it around the side seams where they're going to be least visually obvious, if at all. So I'm going to do my final setup round and then it's time to do the grafting. Okay, so I finished my purl setup round. I've resolved the disparity in my stitch numbers. We're now ready to prepare for the grafting. And you can graft without moving your stitches onto separate needles, but ease for me means that I am just going to go through now and I'm going to move all my knit stitches onto another needle, and then I'll hold them together in the standard grafting methodology and graft them together. So I'll come back to you after I've moved these stitches onto two separate needles. So a basic Kitchener setup. Now I have cut my yarn. It's around 3 times the circumference of the neckline. On the tapestry needle, good to go. So just secure this first stitch. And the back one. So much yarn. Right. And now we're good to go with the basic Kitchener technique. So knit off. Purl into the next stitch. Purl off the back needle. Now with all grafting, I try not to pull it too tight as you go, otherwise you can end up with a dreadful ridgeline. I prefer to wait to the end and then just tidy up the stitches, even out the tension, and resolve it there for a nice finish. Okay, and there we have it, a beautiful tubular bind off along the edge of the V-neck of the Tudor twist vest.